Istanbul is big, bold, and vibrant. People have been living around here for about 8,000 years, but the city itself was founded just over 2,500 years ago. And ever since that time, it has stood firmly on one of the most enduring crossroads in history, a foot in two worlds, rolling with whatever punches history or politics throws at it and never falling down. Istanbul just is. But let's be honest, as magical as this place is to so many people, it struggles with urban issues that are off the charts. This is one of the cities in the series that makes me wonder if I'll even be able to find those golden nuggets of life-sized goodness that I cherish so much, that I crave. It's time for a deep dive into this ancient global metropolis, a city with pressing issues and the starkest of contrasts. Sprawling on both sides of the Bosphorus Strait, that's this body of water right here, the stunning, no, let's call it the magnificent city of Istanbul is part of both Europe and Asia. This multi-layered metropolis is growing fast. Its population, over a period of just 60 years, has increased tenfold. I've seen a lot of cities, and trust me when I say that Istanbul is massive, now home to an estimated 15 million people. And that brings all the urban challenges you've come to expect in this series. But here, they're bigger. Sprawl, traffic, insane traffic, lack of public space, lack of green space, a housing crisis, a pollution crisis. Yeah, you know, all of that stuff. And to top it all off, the complex geopolitical backdrop creates issues that many of us, elsewhere in the world, will likely never have to face. War, autocracy, terrorist attacks, a refugee crisis, and the list goes on. It's almost impossible to tell the story of urbanism in Istanbul in just 1 hour. But I'll do my best as I navigate the streets and meet the citizens to understand how they're trying to make it all work, as a city and as a home. What do you think it is that about this city that captures so many people's imaginations?
We have this saying, if you smell the opium of Istanbul, you can never leave. I think there is something charming, something intoxicating about living here.
Born and raised in Istanbul, Ali is a filmmaker who explores the impact of political and economic currents on the lives of the citizens. He's also a member of Istanbul for All, a group of volunteers who work towards a more equal and sustainable city. They host a weekly web show called Cities for All. So a big part of the narrative forever here in Istanbul is Asia, Europe. You said, oh, I grew up on the Asian side, I went to school on the Europe side. We're leaving Asia now, but I mean, how does that affect the DNA of the city or the mentality of the city when you keep talking about continents?
Yeah, so we are right now on the Marmara Sea, which connects Black Sea to Mediterranean Sea, and we are leaving Asia for Europe. So I think this is the DNA of the city. So it's always in motion, and it's always a problem of, are we East, are we West? Are we tradition? Are we modern? And this is what this city is built on. There is always this constant force that pushes you forward for the modern, for something new. And there is always this counter force which holds you back. Let's preserve this, let's conserve this, let's hold on to our tradition. So this is, I think, the struggle. And I love this, actually, I love this. But the big question is, what happens now? What is the present of Istanbul? And how are we gonna come together and think in a common sense about the city, about the future of the city? I used to live in Asian side, and every day I was taking the ferry every day I was crossing continents, and it's a joke, you know, like we are, and also on the bridge it says welcome to Asia. So it's a thing.
Yeah.
We are going from Asia to Europe almost every day. We are migrants already in our city.
Migrants, daily migrants,
migrants in our
between
city.
continents, yeah.
Yes, but we should embrace this. We should understand that this is the DNA. It's dark times. No one knows where everything is going. When the world is polarized, Turkey heavily polarized, Istanbulites are thinking of different Istanbul for their future. So half of the population thinks and expects a different future of Istanbul, and the other half expects different future. So what is the common sense that moves Istanbul forward? I think right now all those efforts by small communities, all people who are really willing to have progress for the community at large, and at some point they will all come together and will make a shining, brighter future for all of us.
Urban change comes street by street, neighborhood by
Most
neighborhood.
definitely.
One park, 2013, Gezi Park.
Most
People
definitely.
fighting for public space.
Most definitely.
That exploded into a broader
Most
protest.
definitely. And also Gezi Park helped everyone, every different shareholder of the city to touch each other. So we were literally staying hand by hand next to each other, learning from each other.
In May 2013, a group of activists staged a sit-in in Gezi Park after the Turkish government announced plans to build a real estate project on top of the park. The removal of the resistance with the use of excessive force sparked an unprecedented wave of protests. Citizens from all walks of life camped in the park, and 3 million people demonstrated throughout the entire country. The park was saved, yeah, but the brutal repression of the protests killed 11 people and injured 8,000 more.
People from different backgrounds come together and hold on to the park for a good month, and then people realize that they are on the same page on many things, and they continue to protest for their own rights regarding the governance, for example, regarding a better future. So that made people come together and protest and kind of find a shared understanding, and also leave their differences aside for a moment. You know, like after Gezi protest, we have our hopes. We learn not to be too hopeful too early. So I think it's just this constant ups and downs.
The Gezi protests became much more than just a fight to preserve a park. They evolved into an opposition movement, challenging an increasingly authoritarian national government. There's the tension of being caught in the middle, but like there has to be a destination. Where do you think that is?
At the end of the day, we are citizens. We live in cities. It's gigantic. We should at some point leave something that we cannot hold on to and hold on to the future of the cities and build it together, goddammit. So that's the essence of it. So I'm living and breathing in this day and age in Istanbul, and I should have a say about Istanbul first and foremost. Just by holding on to Istanbul and the neighborhoods that we are living, only through holding on to the communities, to other people, then we will build the very nature of a community that can reflect on a broader sense for the Turkey and hopefully affect the politics at large.
Gezi Park defied the bulldozers, but most other green spaces did not. Hand in hand with developers, the government is now building luxury condos, shiny skyscrapers, modern shopping malls, and, yeah, more highways. And that, of course, has left very little space for parks and gardens. But some citizens are holding the fort and resisting in any way they can.
Merhaba.
Hey, welcome. Hi, Rana.
So the best garden view in all of Istanbul, is it, do you think?
İstanbul'un en değerli arazisi. Evet.
Yeah, it's not.
Galata Port
Uh-huh.
ve 9000 metrekare başka yeşil alan yok burada. Son kalan yeşil alanımız Beyoğlu'nda, bir de deprem toplanma alanı.
Sevil Bastürk is part of Roma Bostanı, a small community garden that residents created on an abandoned plot of land in the district of Beyoğlu. According to the Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality, only 2.2% of this city is occupied by green space. In comparison, that number is 11% in Paris, 15% in Athens, and 19% in Stockholm. Needless to say, any available green space is very precious here. You're activists, but there's no activism group. You don't meet on a Wednesday and discuss the next project. It's just you just do it.
Biz kendimize gönüllü aktivist demedik. Roma Bostanı insanıyız dedik. Öyle de hitap edilmek istiyoruz. Çünkü biz buraya aitiz. Hiç toplantı yapmadık. Bütün bu 7 senelik süreç boyunca birlikte çalıştık, birlikte ürettik, birlikte direndik. Ve burası son kalan yeşil alanımızdı. İşte deprem toplanma alanımızdı. Ben de burada yaşayan, permakültür bilen biri olarak hani Gezi'den sonra, Gezi'den aldığımız ilhamla. Çünkü orada başka bir dünyanın ihtimalini sevdik, deneyimledik. Aldığımız ilhamla emsal olduk, ilham olduk bütün mahallelere.
Although they've become an inspiration, the work is never finished. And today, I will make my modest contribution.
You cannot imagine how much trash was here when we first came here. It was like a dump yard. And we cleaned out this place and built up these wicked beds. And meanwhile, we were all like laughing with each other, and everyone is helping out with each other, which is also something that is hard to find nowadays, living in big cities, people helping out each other and being understanding towards each other and being kind and doing something together. So that's actually what connected me to this garden, creating a community, coming together with people, like-minded people, and also teaching each other, learning from each other. It's just one of the most important things in life, I believe.
Once the citizens found this land, cleaned it up, and flipped it into a community garden, the district suddenly announced the construction of 4 buildings on the site and in the adjacent park. The people, of course, came together to fight this project. Tell me about the fight.
Yani istemiyoruz demedik, ne istediğimizi gösterdik. Kamusal bir alanı, yani herkesin ortak olan kamusal bir alanı müşterek bir alan haline getirdik. Bunu nasıl yaptık? Ektiğimiz her şeyi öğreterek, buradaki etraftaki çocuklar için sebze yatağı yaparak ve buranın hepimize ait olan şeylerin tek tek sahip olduklarımız kadar değerli olduğunu gösterdiğimiz bir kamusal bir alanı müşterek bir alan haline getirdik.
So when you all say we, who is we? What is the group that is behind this project?
Sen, ben, bizim oğlan. Herkes. Sokaktan geçen, yani o yoldan geçen, burada Bostan'a yolu düşen herkes. Yani İstanbul'un İstanbul'dan her yerinden herkes geldi zaten buraya.
So these are absolutely passionate urban citizens here in Istanbul, but compared to so many of the other cities that I have covered with the Life-Size City, it's a little bit different. In other places, they're like, oh, here are some options. This could be a cool park, a cool public space. This one is best suited to people in this neighborhood. They do not have that luxury in this neighborhood. This is literally the last piece of green, unbuilt land in this entire neighborhood. So like this, the importance of this is just off the charts. Back to work.
This happened now.
Yeah?
This is really our story, and everybody joined us like this.
Yeah.
They asked randomly, what are you doing there? And I said, yeah, we are just planting, and can we join you?
Oh, really? Just these women walking past the street?
Yeah, we know how to plant, and we can join you. I said, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
But if I want something like that,
Yeah.
I couldn't plan.
Yeah. No, that's just too beautifully random. Yeah. So you're here, you're building, you're working, you're touching the soil. What is the future vision, like the final vision for these spaces?
Şimdi yeni Beyoğlu planları yapıldı ve biz orada bu parkla beraber bütünlüklü bir şekilde orası Sanatçılar Parkı, burası da Roma Bostanı olarak planlara işlendi. Yani gelecek kuşaklara bırakacağımız bir miras oldu. Hani bu bizim hiç hayal bile edemediğimiz bir şeydi, oldu. Bundan sonra belediye ile birlikte buranın bizim hayal ettiğimiz gibi bir gıda ormanı olması için umut olduk, umut. Biz bir hayal miydi, gerçek oldu.
The people of Roma Bostanı are an inspiration for the world. They fought not just for a garden, but for public space. It's the essence of urban life. It's where we gather, encounter diversity, and build a society. Whether it's a park, a community garden, a square, or a market.
Merhaba.
Merhaba.
Nice to meet you. Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, pleasure.
This is Piyale Paşa in Beyoğlu. It's a very small district, and this is a very small bazaar actually, but it's very local.
Alexis Şanal is co-founder of Sanal Ark. Together with her colleague Sinem Serap Duran, they fell in love with the temporary bazaars of Istanbul, open-air markets that pop up all around the city. For more than 10 years now, Alexis and Sinem have studied their history, function, and structure, documenting every single detail.
Some of them have set up early morning, and as they expand, they'll expand down the road.
Okay. And how far does it go? I mean, it could go forever.
Well, that's what they do. They kind of have this beautiful way to expand and contract. So in the larger markets, if they have more, they come down the roads and roads, and they always use these side streets. Even in this neighborhood, there's 5 markets. There's this market today, there's another market down the street. Tomorrow there's 2 markets. So the bigger markets usually come on days like the Wednesdays or Saturdays and Fridays. And then the Thursday markets tend to be slightly smaller, and they go further and penetrate further into the neighborhoods.
Flexibility is a key factor generally. I can hear.
That's what makes these structures so amazing. Just with 3 parts, the ropes, the tarps, and the poles, they create this incredibly dynamic, agile structure. They can go down slopes, it can go on different terrains, it can go in streets, it can go in big open spaces. And for us, it's like this intangible heritage that's been passed down for generations in the cities throughout the region.
Should we go in?
Yeah.
We gotta go in. This is exciting. This is so cool. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
The merchants who run the bazaars use only ropes, tarps, and poles in all sorts of creative ways in their setups. And at the end of the day, they pack up and go without leaving a trace. The complex, highly functional knots they use have been passed down from generation to generation, becoming a true art form.
So in Istanbul, one of the things that's really exceptional is that markets come to every neighborhood throughout the city in walking distance. So there's over 300 markets a week of these bazaars.
300?
300.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Who decides where they are? Like, what's this? Is there a system or is it just super organic?
It's formal. Everybody has a permit here. And everybody is part of a trade union. So all the bazaars and all of the tables are actually permitted. So it's actually part of the formal economy, even though it may seem very ad hoc. And it's kind of a nice contract with the community to keep fresh food at a very low cost because they're not having the overhead of rent and all of these other things.
Generally speaking, these streets has their old traditions, and it goes and goes like this, and they are where they were like 50 years before, mostly. And mostly very close to a mosque, because that was a tradition in Ottoman life, that the bazaar and the public space enriches around the mosque.
This is one of the reasons we want to share them with the world, is because this model that has endured for, we think, over 1,000, if not more years, has actually capitalized on limited resources, right? So they don't use the public space like the parks or the Meydans. They come into these underutilized secondary streets or the watershed or parking lots. And they actually create this incredible amplification of public space one day a week. You know, and this access to an economy on both sides.
But it's food security, which is so important in cities now, right?
That's
but it's
why we think it's so
food
important
security.
as well. Exactly. I mean, that's why I find them quite profound. If I look at a lot of the kind of developed economies and their kind of real pressing issues. This, to me, responds in a much more dynamic way of using underutilized land resources, as well as providing food security and, more importantly, fresh, nutritious food. I mean, like, you get your seasonal food, you get your vitamins, it's affordable. I mean, it really makes the quality of life much, much better. Yeah,
You
feel very
can
safe.
bring your children to like a family event.
You'll never hear of somebody being pickpocketed in these places. Like, never hear.
So it's kind of like a self-regulatory society in the sense that if it's primarily women doing the shopping, you know, and then there's men selling, but like you're saying it's safe, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody feels safe
Perfectly
here.
safe.
They take care of each other.
Yeah,
Amazing amount of produce.
yeah.
Where does it come from? Because we're talking about food security, right?
Yeah.
It's obviously comes from somewhere. I mean, what's the situation like here? How far do they have to bring this produce to the market?
So one of the things that's interesting is the fresh food that we find here actually comes from the wholesale markets.
Okay.
And so the food you actually get here very often isn't very different than what you would get in the supermarkets. Actually, everybody has access to fresh food, and the biggest difference here than the supermarkets is that it's perceived more fresh. So they actually take the food in the morning from the wholesale markets, where the grocery stores maybe take it every 10 days, 7 days.
Prices vary over the course of the day. Fresher produce in the morning fetches a higher price. At closing time, whatever's left is given to those struggling to make ends meet. It's food security for the whole of society. It's thoughtful and helpful, and it's inspirational for all of us. We've been doing like, what, 4 seasons of the Life-Size City. We've been all over the planet, and I've seen so many amazing things. But this street, this is like literally what this show is about, you know?
Yeah.
The organic nature of it, the community, the social fabric, commerce, you know, architecture. It's like everything.
Yeah.
I
The
get it.
endurance
I'm done.
of it.
I'm leaving now. See you later. we've done the Life-Size City in one shoot.
But actually, one of the things that's most poetic about it is its kind of urban infrastructure. It is a type of social infrastructure that's providing affordable fresh food to everybody throughout the city, throughout the country, every day of the week. And there's no exception to it. I have not found this system anyplace else in the world.
No, I mean-
and it's so efficient.
Like people in cities and towns everywhere, Istanbulites need to move around the place. I was surprised to learn that around 40% of the population walk. That would indicate some really cool, densely populated neighborhoods with lots of services. 15-minute neighborhoods built centuries before that catchphrase became a thing. And then you have the 30% of the population who take public transport. You don't really notice it when you're in Istanbul, but it's like a supermarket. They have so many different things to choose from. There's a metro, tram, trains, buses, bus rapid transit, funiculars, lots of ferry boats. And then you have the elephant in the room, that 20% of the population who drive. That number is low compared to many cities around the world, but in a city of this scale, that means 4.5 million vehicles on the streets of Istanbul. The city has launched a sustainable mobility master plan, and there are many of the same things that other cities are trying to implement. This is a city that is so dominated by car-centric planning and thinking for decades, and it doesn't seem to be changing. Politicians are still widening roads and building huge motorway projects like it's the 1950s. A lot of the elements in the Sustainable Mobility Master Plan are simply Band-Aids on an open wound. Rampant urbanization is causing typical problems like gentrification and displacement. And in a city this old, it's also endangering the cultural and historical fabric. Artist and photographer Murat German is trying to preserve this identity by documenting the constant transformation of the urban landscape. His work has been shown in more than 80 international exhibitions and is part of over 300 private collections around the world.
So this is a typical narrow street, and it's on the sides you have low-rise buildings of maybe 2 or 3 or at most 4 stories high.
Look up there, you can see how somebody added a little bit of structure on top of something that was much older.
So these are different layers you can find in Istanbul in a very juxtaposed way. These are, to a certain degree, maybe a bit illegal, but I prefer these over the high-rise buildings because at least you happen to see certain layers. And
Yeah, but people made that. Like, there's somebody who literally saw an opportunity,
Yes.
found some materials and built it, right? We don't know who builds these sky-rise, you know? I mean, it's like, this is organic, right?
and organic, and they built it for need. They did not build it for profit.
No, necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Exactly.
All this has fingerprints on it, right? There's laundry hanging out of a window there. I mean, you know, and if you look up, there's another bizarre structure that somebody just...
Cantilevering again.
Yeah.
I think with the other types of developments, we lose the scale.
Yeah.
And the connection in between people, the connection with the street, the connection with the public spaces, the connection with the play yards of children. It's all cut.
In his world-renowned series Metamorphosis, Murat creates wide panoramic images of cities, capturing the entire urban landscape. His artistic touch comments on transformation and the instability that generates. Epic skyline, 360 degrees in one of the world's most interesting cities. You have to tell me how Istanbul, which you love very much, how does it influence your work as a photographer?
The place is, first of all, it has many layers. Byzantine Empire, and then before that there was a Latin invasion of the city. So whenever you dig here for new development, especially in the historical peninsula, you always find new stuff. How does this affect my work? I'm trying to document Istanbul as thoroughly as possible because mainly, even though we see on this other side, we see a new development with high-rises. Istanbul is basically a horizontal city. This allows me to be able to show everything at once.
It's all the souvenirs, the tourism here is all like, you know, depictions of the skyline, right? Like the horizontalness.
Yeah, exactly. So horizontalness is quite important. So this is why I was always interested in creating panoramas. So you see all the layers and all the new development and old heritage exactly in the same pictures.
Now you mentioned how things change rapidly here. I mean, how does that influence your work in a city that really is, you know, different from day to day?
Istanbul used to be a place where people occupied the streets and the public spaces, open public spaces, very easily and in a very relaxed way. So I remember myself always being on the streets, playing with my mates. It's very nostalgic. You don't have it anymore. Istanbul used to be this very collectively open space to all sorts of people. So there were no zones. And this is something that I really liked in Istanbul. In 15 minutes or half an hour at latest, you would go from one relatively poor neighborhood to a richer neighborhood. So everything was next to each other. So it was open to all sorts of people. But now there is too much division.
These life-sized neighborhoods are now separated from each other by highways, shopping malls, and skyscrapers, all detrimental in the fostering of healthy and diverse communities.
When you're on the 20th or 30th floor, you get disconnected from the ground. So it's a social, cultural, architectural crime, I guess, because it is changing what we are. I call this somehow a crime because I think it's changing our habits. It's changing the heritage. It's changing, you know, the way people live. It's changing the traditions of solidarity. This is also making the city look like another city. For instance, this is Istanbul. But if you look at this other side, it doesn't have any identity to me. I mean, I can see this sort of development anywhere in the world. So this is what I'm trying to document.
Documenting crimes.
Documenting crimes and maybe, using these as evidences for CSI, for crime scene investigation.
Okay, that's cool.
So that I can use this to prove in the future or maybe in the present to be able to explain what my concern is.
Murat's photographs have been used by activists and urban planners to show all that has been lost. Heritage buildings have vanished. Neighborhoods, entire neighborhoods are gone. And parks are now condos. Yeah.
How have things changed over the past 30 or so years? Is it the transformation, the crime scene, is it more intense now than it was before?
Yeah, it's accelerating. Despite some of the rallies, demonstrations that are against this rapid urbanization. And unfortunately, I started to have history even in my own archives. That's very sad.
Yeah.
This means we're definitely losing significant pieces of relics and historical and architectural heritage that we have.
Beyond the physical transformation, this unchecked urbanization has tremendous consequences on the social fabric of the city. Whole communities are being displaced, and more families are losing their homes.
In Istanbul, the reason it's so harsh and it's so radical is partly due to lack of democracy in the country. So you have these entire neighborhoods being demolished with the decision of the Council of Ministers, actually with Erdogan's personal decision, because without him saying that this should be done, it cannot be done.
Right.
So he's the sole decision maker.
Imre Azem is a documentary filmmaker who is very preoccupied with Istanbul's constant transformation. He has teamed up with fellow artists, journalists, and activists to denounce the current approach to city building, which is pitched as a modern mecca of luxury housing and shopping.
So when Erdogan came to power, all these new institutions were in place, so he no longer had the means to distribute wealth in the same way that his predecessors did.
Okay.
So he had to find a new way. And construction was the new way.
To accelerate this urban renewal project, the law was modified, giving the national government all of the decisional power instead of involving the local authorities. And get this, TOKİ, the Turkish housing agency, is controlled by the president himself.
By allocating land, they are able to control who gets what project. And they centralize the permitting system. So in that way, they also control who gets to build what and where. So every construction that you see in Istanbul happens not because it's needed for the city or not because the residents of Istanbul want or need this construction. It's done because somebody is investing the money into this construction, and of course they want a return on their investment. So Istanbul is marketed to foreign investors, and this is what's causing all this illegal construction.
This was a neighborhood.
This was a neighborhood that was built.
Like the neighborhood we have here, right?
Yeah,
Was it similar?
this is what you see here in the construction is just part of the neighborhood. Let's say it's the first stage of the transformation of this neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And what will be built here, it will be luxury buildings. People who are living in these neighborhoods, they don't have the means to spend money in shopping malls, for example.
Yeah.
You know, so from an investor's point of view, they're useless.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they have to be replaced by rich people that have the means to spend, to buy things, to consume, really.
Yeah. To consumers.
Consumers. So these people are not consumers.
Yeah.
I meet Mustafa and Abdusalam, two long-term residents of the neighborhood who have lost their homes forever to shiny new apartments that represent what some would call progress.
So you used to live in this neighborhood, and how long did you live here?
Doğma büyüme. 56 yıl.
And you?
Ben de 20 senedir bu mahallede yaşıyorum. Benim ev buradaydı.
That was his house. Next to it was his house.
Şurası bahçemdeki ağaç. Burası benim bahçeydi.
Oh, wow.
6 ayda bir zamı kaldıramayacakları için çok zor durumdalar.
A lot of the people are going to be left homeless.
Taşınmamız için bize süreyi anında verdiler. Zaten burada polis baskısıyla biliyorsunuz elektriksiz doğalgaz kesildi. 90 gün insanlar burada susuz, elektriksiz, doğalgazsız yaşadı. Buraya mahkum edildi. Gitmemiz için baskılar yapıldı. Sonra duvarlara kağıtlar yapıştırdılar. 15 gün içinde evinizi boşaltmazsanız güvenlik zoruyla alacağız eşyaları dışarı, evinizi yıkacağız dediler.
Her akşam biliyorsunuz zaten yürüyüş, slogan, tencere, tava, düdük,
mücadele etmeye
devlet
çalıştık.
yetkililerine,
Hakkımız
devlet
için.
yetkililerine sesimizi bir şekilde yaşadığımız zulmü duyurmaya çalıştık.
They divided the residents into different groups, like people that have titles, people that don't have titles, people that live in one-story buildings. So giving them different, offering them different things. So it really pitted people against each other.
Yeah.
So it prevented them from acting in unison.
Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer, exactly.
In exchange for their homes, they were each offered an apartment of unspecified size, which came with a mortgage to be refunded over a period of 20 years. The catch here? None of this was actually put into writing. So basically, no legal guarantees, just false promises. The only official document they were forced to sign gave away their rights to their properties.
What is the scale like in the rest of Istanbul? How widespread is what's happening here in the whole city?
So in this neighborhood, 937 units, homes were demolished, which would be about 5,000 people that are affected. So if you take this kind of ratio into account, I would say in Istanbul today, there are tens of thousands of people that are being evicted from their homes and struggling to make rent and with the threat to become homeless.
Weaponizing public services, electricity, water, cutting it off. It's not something you would expect to see in a global metropolis, which begs the question, is Turkey a democracy?
Democracy is not just elections. Democracy is much more than that. Democracy is participating in the decision-making processes. And media, for example, is a big part of what the democracy is. And today, with those standards, I would say, no, Turkey is not a democracy.
The exact number of homeless people in Turkey is unknown, but estimates range from 100 to 150,000, of which some 10,000 live here in the streets of Istanbul. And help from the state is nearly non-existent. It's all left in the hands of volunteers and NGOs.
Hello.
Hoş geldiniz.
Hello. Hello.
Bölünlüksüz olmaz.
So you are going to be our voluntary.
I am the volunteer.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
But what time do the homeless people start to come?
8 o'clock I give food for homes.
8 o'clock.
8
All right.
they
All right,
come
cool.
in.
So we have to work, no?
Yeah.
Aisha has had it rough. Earlier in her life, she ended up on the streets. But through courage and exceptional strength, she rebuilt her life and opened this restaurant, Hayata Saril. During the day, it functions as a regular restaurant. But at night, Aisha and her volunteers serve food to the homeless.
Şeyleri verin, poşetleri verin masaya. Enişte, here.
Here. How long were you homeless for?
4,5 ay. Ama benim dönemimde evsizlere böyle yemek veren yer yoktu. Yemek bulmam çok zordu. Burger King, McDonald's bu konuda benim artık yemeği yememe çok vesile oldu diye. Öbür insanlar bunu yemesin diye mesela buranın önemi odur. Onlara pişen yemek çok ayrıdır.
And in this place, the homeless aren't served leftovers. Aisha and the volunteers make an effort to cook fresh meals for them every evening.
How many meals do you normally make in an evening?
Ortalama 130-150 vardır. Amaç burada 150 kişiye yemek vermek değil. Amaç burada ve o insanlar, evsiz dediğimiz insanlara belki bir iş bulmak, belki bir kalacak yer ayarlayabilmek ve o insanda kendi ekmeğini yeniden kendi kazanmasının fırsatını vermeye çalışıyoruz burada. Ben şöyle diyorum Michael, Bu sokak beni çok iyi biliyor. Bu sokak beni çok iyi biliyor. Buradan başlayalım, Şişhane'ye kadar gidelim. Nerede baksan 400 tane mekan var. Bu 400 tane mekanın 100 tanesi evsize iş verse en güzeli bu olmaz mı?
Since the project started in 2017, more than 600 volunteers have contributed, serving over 160,000 meals to those in need. That is dedication. And get this, they also offer psychological support, workshops, and help in finding work, all in the hope of getting people off the streets.
So your personal story, hard life story.
Very hard.
Yeah, very hard. You made a comeback. You had two choices, and you decided to continue working, not rejecting your past, but working with your past. So why did you continue to look at the reality and to make this a part of your comeback story?
Ben çektim, başkası çekmesin dedim. İnsanlar bizleri yok sayarken biz insanlar var olduğumuzu gösterdik. Şimdi birazdan dışarıya gideceğiz, paketleri göstereceğiz.
Located in the Middle East, at the doorstep of Europe, Turkey is on the receiving end of the world's largest influx of refugees and asylum seekers. After war broke out in Syria in 2011, more than 6 million Syrians left their country looking for peace and safety. And about half of them ended up here in Turkey.
Merhaba.
Merhaba.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
Michael, hello.
Ben.
How are you?
Nice to meet you.
And thank you very much.
Jihad and Bayan both fled war-torn Syria in 2013. They met and fell in love in Istanbul. Now married, the couple created the YOLO Art Center to show that Syrians can play an active part in local society.
I'm really curious to hear what it's like to be Syrian in Istanbul.
Actually, it's not easy at all to come to another city without knowing the language, without knowing the culture itself.
We are from Syria, and in Syria we have dictator prison. So it was like we have a closed country. So it was like shocked me when I go out and coming to Turkey, to Istanbul, how the people living, and very stressful city.
Okay.
Because 25 million people here.
And it's very huge.
Yeah. Very
Also,
huge.
the transportations,
Everything. So, and in the same time, Istanbul have a lot of faces. Yani, you go into some place and you see some neighborhood. It's similar to Syria, let's say, and you go into other and similar to Europe more, and going to other places is similar like Iran and Afghanistan. So it's very mixed.
But what is the general attitude in Turkey to all of the Syrians? Because many, many Syrians came here. Is it positive or negative?
Yeah, to be honest, the first was very, very positive. We were welcome. But by the time goes on, and especially with the media and especially with a lot of pressures, let's say, the attitude started to change because of a lot of Syrians, they couldn't find their way in Istanbul, so they moved to Europe or to America. So the people stayed here must were the people who cannot go out or they don't have the money or the education, so they got stuck in Turkey. So people start to judge like all Syrians are, they are not educated enough, they don't know how to work, they are like poor, they are weak. So lately it's not that much good as before. They are all shocked when we are saying like we are Syrians till now. Yeah. Like you don't look like Syrians. They are always giving the same reaction. No, we are similar to Turkey somehow, but the examples that you met, it's not like the whole picture of Syrians.
Yeah. What's it like? Do you have exactly the same rights as the Turks? Like, are you equal to the Turks, on paper?
Yeah, it's a long story, but I'm gonna start.
Also a pause there before you answer.
We must take a deep breath because till this time we are not legal refugees. We are guests.
Okay.
So we don't have the rights of refugees here, and we don't have the rights of Turkish people. So we are in the middle. When they are saying like we are guests, so there's a law specialized for guests.
Okay.
And it's not that clear. So you don't have the right to take the citizenship. Like there's no clear steps to take it. You don't have the right to apply for some jobs, for renting some houses, because you are a guest. And since you called a guest, you are like alarmed to leave in any second, because there's time for having a guest in your house.
More than 10 years after the beginning of the war, Syrians living in Turkey still only have temporary protection status and are simply not eligible for refugee status. And with that, they're limited in their freedom, their employment possibilities, and their travel within the country. They even require permission just to visit someone in another Turkish city.
What made you start this art center?
Actually, we came up with the idea of this center after we suffered several years from not having any places to go spoken Arabic or having any events in Arabic or English. So we started thinking like, okay, so a place to perform and a place for meeting and talking and socialize and a place to develop yourself. To learn. So we are teaching guitar, languages, family constellation, mandala therapy. So it's like a mixture between cultural and artistic things.
YOLO art is a cultural oasis in the middle of the urban landscape. Every neighborhood around the world should have something like this. It's a unique place to learn, share, create, or just hang out. An inclusive hub where the common goal is collective growth, not profit. That's what I call a pocket of life-sized goodness.
And it's everything. It's music, it's stand-up comedy, it's...
we
open mic also,
We even did Indian cultural music, so it was very amazing. Two people coming from
India.
And
they played an Indian music. Yeah, today is the jam session night, so people are coming, playing music, singing. We have friends from America, we have friends from Egypt and from Syria, Iraq, Jordan, so from Iran too. So they are coming all together playing music, and they are changing every week.
So is this the place that you imagined? Like when you first had the idea for YOLO Art Center, is this the kind of vibe, the kind of atmosphere that you dreamed of? When
we are on the way.
Yeah,
we are on the way.
You're on the way.
Yeah. It's not
the whole shape, because we opened 5 months ago. So we are in the way still, but yes, the vibe, if you're talking about the vibe of the people, yeah, it is.
Okay,
it is what we're seeking.
If I come back in a year and you have the full shape, what is it going to look like? What will I experience in your mind?
It will be more magical. Now the people know each other, and the community has beginning. The musicians community, chess player community.
More different nationalities, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah.
More fabric, more everybody knows each other, maybe more or what? Okay.
Yeah. After we started YOLO, they changed the whole street. It was older than this. They changed
the road and everything.
The road, the buildings. They started coloring it again. So we started to give even a vibe for the shape of the street.
You know, having done this series for so long, like having a cafe and an art center that actually changes the street, you know, makes the street better and safer and nicer and modern, you know, that really is spilling out onto the street.
Exactly.
Sure.
This is what the life-size city is all about. Contagious positive change. Istanbul has challenges, massive challenges, but the people here are relentless and passionate. Every initiative, protest, and act of engagement is an inspiration for change.
So in 2013, citizens here in Istanbul descended upon Gezi Park in the heart of the city to protest against a shopping mall that was planned for the site. They were met with police brutality, which only served to bring even more Istanbulites down to the barricades. And I remember watching it on the news and thinking,
At the core of it, on the very first day, all it was citizens fighting for green space, the public fighting for public space. The protests and the park are now powerful symbols for change, the hope of change here in Istanbul and in Turkey, and I'm proud to have this symbol as a part of my urban map.
It's awesome. Super cool font.
The meaning of the name Istanbul is from the Greek. It means to the city. That's cool. And it also says a lot about the stature of this place through millennia. It was simply the city, and you had to go to it. Every neighborhood street is charming and alive. Every view is epic and historic, and that's what makes Istanbul so vibrant and full of life. I am fascinated by the constant tension in this city between neighborhoods, between East and West, between Europe and Asia. The obscene gap between rich and poor, citizens up against developers. This city has rolled with so many punches through time, but it is getting harder to breathe, metaphorically and literally. But after 4 seasons of the life-size city, I have learned one absolute truth. The fate of a city lies in the hands of its citizens. It is only our inherent passion for community, our insistence on urban life and justice, our hearts and minds that will determine our future. From the past 7,000 years of urban experience into the next 7,000 years, there is only one direction: forward. Ice 10 Poland, Istanbul to the city, together.